From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Project podcast. Welcome to 306. I am Brad Robinson. Today, we're talking about the habits of the anxiety sufferer. I absolutely love doing these ones because back in the day when I was suffering from health anxiety, first of all, I didn't even know those two words. Health anxiety. What the hell is health anxiety? I was acting out this victim. Well, I was acting out the victim, but more importantly, I was responding to the unknown that was within me. And that's what we talked about last week. We talked about the symptoms of anxiety, how that's an unknown phenomenon for the individual, but also why it's so important to name, like Adam naming the animals, name the symptoms for what it is, labeling it as anxiety. It's really crucial. This is a crucial first step to label what you're contending with as something like health anxiety. Because what this does is it shines a light, and it's not a clear light, but it's a light nonetheless, because the anxiety sufferer is swimming in an ocean of uncertainty. I didn't know what health anxiety was and meant. And now, with these episodes, I hope that it shines a light to the unknown that you're contending with. Or if you know someone contending with this, share this podcast with them because it will change their life. Because they think that they are this unique snowflake who's suffering and belongs in a mental institution. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. This is very normal, but yet it's not well talked about, especially in schools where anxiety and trauma begin to manifest, because these are big moments in people's lives where they're under a great deal of pressure, and to cope with the unknown and uncertainty of life is so what's more important than that? Because how do you manage stress of a job interview? How do you manage stress of juggling the responsibilities of being an adult? How do you deal with fears and phobias which plague every person? And we need to learn these things. So today I'm talking about the habits that make up the identity of the health anxiety sufferer. And this, no doubt, will it'll ease the uncertainty a lot. And then the first step is getting yourself knowledgeable, understanding that you're not a unique suffering snowflake, but this is a very common thing. And there's something out there called health anxiety that is curable. And I can't even tell you how much of a relief that is to people. So the first habit I do want to talk about is spending too much time in the washroom, something I unconsciously did. And when I found out that this was related to health anxiety, it blew my mind. One thing I remember is I would go to the bathroom a lot when I was at gatherings, when I was at work or at a gathering. So I remember a specific time when I was with Maggie, and she was with her friends at an apartment. And I remember going to the bathroom, and I was literally standing in front of the mirror, not wanting to go back out. Okay. And what I was doing in there was, not only was I checking my urine, but I was drinking a lot. And I'll get into these two things as well. But I was also not interested in socializing when there was a giant snake lurking within me, which I talked about last time, right? The giant snake of sensations, symptoms, and the unknown. I don't have time to socialize. I don't have the emotional capacity to be a social butterfly. And at work, I was drinking a lot of water and I was going to the bathroom a lot because in the bathroom, I was just seeking out privacy. I was trying to separate myself from other people as much as possible because I felt uneasy with the judgments of others. I was in this emotional, I was, what would you say? I was contending with this roller coaster within me of emotion, and I felt judged by the other people around me. So the washroom breaks were kind of this separation, a relief to be alone, to deal with the sensations, maybe make a phone call, check the urine to see if it's as yellow or like interesting looking as it was before. So that was very unpleasant. And then let's move on to the checking because checking is a huge health anxiety habit where you're looking in the mirror at your eyeballs for at the veins looking for any discoloration, you're looking at the moles for any discoloration, skin, you're touching parts of your skin. I remember back in elementary school, like, it's so interesting because I tell this to my clients all the time. Why would someone in grade 8, how old are you in grade 8? I can't remember, like, what, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. In, maybe like 12, 13. At the time, I was touching, I remember at recess, I was touching a part of my jaw and there was a bump there, and I called my mom on my cell phone saying like, This bump, is this okay?" And I was very concerned about this on during recess. How unusual is that? Shouldn't you just be out there playing? And so I was contending with health anxiety for a very long time, and it's been a part of my life for a long time. But what I want to say here is the person checking, well, they are the detective, okay, and their body is the crime scene. That's what's happening. And so you're looking at your private, you're looking inside your mouth, you're wondering and concerned about the discoloration, the sores, the aches and pains, and it's a constant obsession because you're not feeling well and something triggered that. And maybe it's a whole host of things that have triggered that. Maybe it's all your bad habits coming together and it opening up your eyes to the fact that, well, it's, well, you're unhealthy. Maybe something happened to you where you were diagnosed with something, or someone close to you passes away, and this opens your eyes to your own mortality. The snake comes into the garden, opens up your eyes, and then now you have to manage the snake and learn how to deal and wrestle with the unknown. So it's no joke. And then another thing that a health anxiety sufferer does is they hide behind their partner at a gathering. Something I did that very night that I was talking to you about, where I was going to the bathroom at Maggie's friend's place. I would whisper in her ear, like, "Can we go?" And you're kind of hiding behind your partner, using them as a shield so that you can be internal and think about your symptoms and be with your pain. And then you wind up leaving early. That's another habit of a health anxiety sufferer. Another one is constant doctor phone calls or visits, going to the hospital continuously, mainly because of the heart beating, the heart palpitations, the feeling dizzy and faint. Heart attacks are insanely common. The worry of a heart attack is insanely common because your body is ramped up in stress mode, and the excessive adrenaline and cortisol that's running through your body is definitely pumping that heart of yours. So those visits, that's understandable. That's understandable to mistake those feelings and the arm sensations, the tingly sensations, the stiffness in the arm can all of that combined definitely makes it feel like you are having a heart episode. And then another one, and this is a big one, is talking about your illness constantly, labeling yourself as unwell and being a victim. This is a very unconscious and common habit. And you're creating a feeling of being heard and appreciated, right? You're enjoying that feeling. You're feeling connected with other people, and thus you're feeling connected with the victim identity. You're now associating this victim like state as something beneficial to you because you are getting attention from the people around you, because they're paying attention, because you're talking about your sensations and symptoms, and they're providing you with emotional support, and that's analgesic. It's analgesic. You're getting patted, you're getting hugged, kissed, whatever. Even the attention can be very, well, analgesic. It can be very dopaminergic. And so that's keeping you in this victim like bubble. And then, like I said at the beginning of this episode, labeling yourself with health anxiety is the beginning step of recovery. Because, first of all, health anxiety is common. That's a relief. And it's curative, which is also a relief. And so being labeled as someone with health anxiety, that's a huge, huge step in the right direction from, oh, I have cancer because Google said so and it's matching with my symptoms and sensations. And that brings us to Googling your symptoms. Why is Google such a negative habit, especially with health anxiety? Well, Google opens up a portal to many possibilities, and that's not good because too many directions in front of you is anxiety producing. You don't want that. You want restrictions. You want repetition. And with someone with health anxiety, they're experiencing bodily sensations up the yin yang, right? Like they're constant, they're dominant, they're there, the body zaps, the heart palpitations. We discussed all of that last week. And so their emotional glass is overflowing because their body is screaming out to them, something's not right. I'm not well. I don't know what these sensations mean. Fair enough. You don't even know what health anxiety is. Well, until now, right? And so Googling a symptom produces that startle reflex. In these people, like my old self, are emotionally compromised because, well, they're they're sensitive. Their emotional glass is overflowing. So any more novelty that drips into it is going to send the water over the edge. And so that's what happens when you Google is you attach yourself to the worst case scenario. Oh, I have cancer. Why do people do that? Because when you're in stress mode, you're a magnet. You're a magnet. You're attracting the worst case scenarios because you don't feel well and you're feeling all of these sensations simultaneously, right? That's what's causing you to not feel well. And so you attract what you value. You're attracting what you value. If you value attention, then you will unconsciously keep it with the victim attitude. You will keep it. So when I would Google, I would be expecting something terrible because you've already set yourself up that way. In your mind, you're catastrophizing because the brain jumps to worst case scenarios. And there's some utility in that because I guess it's better to prepare yourself for the worst case scenario than, you know, but it's actually, at the end of the day, it actually proves not to be useful because what you really want to do when you are trying to address an unknown concern, right, is to move minimally forward so you don't snowball yourself into a depression or a panic episode. You want to move yourself very slowly and traverse yourself slowly across the domain of the unknown. And, you want to, because the anxiety sufferers, they don't talk to themselves and they don't know how to. First of all, they don't know how to talk to themselves. And so they're jumping like they're jumping into the deep end. And that's not good because that jumping is going to bring up worst case scenarios and they're going to fall for it, which is not helpful. That's the thing. It's not helpful. And so how to move forward in this unknown space? Well, you need help. You can't do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. So I hope that this podcast and all of the videos that I have, which I have a lot on the YouTube, I have like over 500 videos, use those as stepping stones forward. Because once you're in the deep end, it's hard to reel yourself back to shore, but it is 100% doable. And I see it all the time. And you have to, there's no other choice. And the sufferer has no filter. And that's what I'm talking about from them jumping into the deep end is there's no filter. It's catastrophizing. It's that kind of jumping. And so Googling sparks that fortune telling. My fortune is I'm a goner. And that's what happens to depressed people, by the way. When they're backed into a corner, their mindsets jump from, well, I did something wrong, and I usually do something wrong, and I'm going to continue to do these things wrong, and I'll always do these things and fail at these things, and I'm hopeless. I should just jump off a bridge, and they just they move quickly down that road. And to get yourself out of that terrible way of thinking, you have to chunk all the problems down to micro steps and to master the micro steps towards the things you're deeming as being wrong. And you have to work in that direction. You have to work on those micro steps. Googling is a good way to attach irrational conclusions to search results because you are just merely attempting to solve this unknown concern. Makes sense? Makes sense. Check in on yourself. That's the next health anxiety habit. You check in internally, not just checking on the eyes and the moles. That's part of it. That's checking externally. Checking internally. Upon waking up in the morning, the health anxiety sufferer has a checklist. They're seeing if the checked boxes from yesterday are still checked. So they wake up, is that sensation there? Is that feeling there? Oh no, is it? And then next thing you know, they're feeling it and it triggers more stress. And then the next habit is advertisements like billboards, magazines, or on TV, or TV programs with violence, or others talking about an illness makes you perk up and go, oh no, I have that. I have, similar to Google, where your glass is overflowing, you're attaching, well, you're valuing um, illness. You're not feeling well. So you're concluding already before even knowing what the actual problem is. You're concluding that you're not well. So when you're Googling the symptoms or the diseases like cancer, for example, yeah, all the diseases, they do overlap. That's another thing about Googling is so many things overlap. Different degrees of illnesses overlap. I mean, it's so, now that I look back on my anxiety disorder, I think about the heart palpitations, the chest pains, the arm tightness, and I'm thinking, wow, it's the same symptoms and sensations as a heart attack. But when you know it's real, when it's a real one, it's a real one. That's for sure. And so there's no trust in yourself. That's why you're perking up. That's why you're wondering, because you don't know what's going on inside of you. There's no trust in yourself, and there's no trust in the world you inhabit. There's no trust. So that's part of the recovery process, is to build trust. How do you do that? Well, there's many ways. I'm not going to get into all of it, but you build on the healthy identity that you believe, well, whatever you believe to be healthy, you build upon that. And you have to use other people as role models. You have to. You have to. Another habit that is very interesting and very common is you overdrink water to flush out the illness, right? Quotes, illness, using information you already know. Even though it's bad information, you're using this information to solve the immediate concern, right? You have this idea in your head that your body is like a sewer system, and just pumping it full of water is going to clean the sides of the sewer, right? It's just going to wash out any gunk that's in there. And that's a typical mindset of the health anxiety sufferer, is that they're over drinking water because they believe whatever disease and illness that they have, it's going to like flush that out of their system. And so they're going to the bathroom a lot, and that's also contributing to all the bathroom visits. I remember drinking cranberry juice like no tomorrow because I read online that you drink cranberry juice to cure a UTI. And so that's one of the things I did. I thought I had a UTI at one point. And then the biggest habit of the health anxiety sufferer is avoiding places. You're avoiding places because, well, the fact that you avoided the place originally, like work, for example, which I did, is for two big reasons. One is you don't want to be there and be judged by other people. That's the big one, right? Being judged, acting like a fool, being new or inexperienced. It's not just that, though. The main reasons is being awkward and, you're feeling awkward because of your symptoms and sensations. And that brings us to the other reason why you're avoiding work, is because of your own mortality. You don't feel safe in your own skin. You're going to be outside and you're going to suffer a heart attack or something serious and be away from emergency personnel and the people that you care about. And you're going to make a fool out of yourself as you die in front of strangers. And so you avoid these places because your mind goes, well, why would you go and take that risk when you can just stay home? But then the problem with staying home is, with me, I noticed, Well, what about tomorrow? And you know that dragon is going to be there. There's no avoiding it. And you try and shrink away back into unconsciousness like you were when you were 15. You can't do that anymore. You're now whatever age you are, 25, 30, 40, 50. You know you're too awake enough. You're awake. You're awake. You're awakened to your vulnerabilities. And if you shrink back into unconsciousness, you're just going to be like Captain Hook, always trying to run away from the crocodile. But the fact that he knows it's there, he can never shrink back into unconsciousness. The only thing he can do is face the damn thing. And then he won't be a slave to the thing chasing him. So we're all a slave to something. Open up your eyes, pay attention to what it is. And so the dragon grows. The dragon grows in size. Now, I just ran to go get a book that I bought my son called There's No Such Thing as a Dragon by Jack Kent. It's a children's book that Jordan Peterson, back in the day, long time ago, years ago, did a whole lecture on this book. And I watched the lecture and I thought the book was brilliant. So I definitely bought it for my son. And it's all about dragons growing up. I'll read you the book. I'll read you the book. Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room. It was a small dragon, about the size of a kitten. The dragon wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother. There's no such thing as a dragon, said Billy's mother. And she said it like she meant it. Billy went back to his room and began to dress. The dragon came close to Billy and wagged its tail. But Billy didn't pat it. If there's no such thing as something, it's silly to pat it on its head. Billy washed his face and hands and went down to breakfast. The dragon went along. It was bigger, and it was almost the size of a dog. Billy sat down at the table. The dragon sat down on the table. This sort of thing was not usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She had already said there was no such thing as a dragon. And if there's no such thing, you can't tell it to get down off the table. Mother made some pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate them all. Mother made some more, but the dragon ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter. Billy got one of them, but he said that was all he really wanted anyway. Billy went upstairs to brush his teeth. Mother started cleaning the table. The dragon, who was quite as big as Mother by this time, made himself comfortable on the hall rug and went to sleep. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much he filled the hall. Billy had to go around by way of the living room to get to where his mother was. I didn't know dragons grew so fast, said Billy. There's no such thing as a dragon, said Mother firmly. Cleaning the downstairs took Mother all morning, but with the dragon in the way and having to climb in and out of windows to get from room to room. By noon, the dragon filled the house. Its head hung out the front door, its tail hung out the back door, and there wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. When the dragon awoke from its nap, he was hungry. A bakery truck went by. The smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist. The dragon ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like this shell on a snail. The mailman was just coming up the path with some mail for the Bixbys when their house rushed past him and headed down the street. He chased the Bixby's house for a few blocks, but he couldn't catch it. When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was that the house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. Mr. Bixby got in his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove along. Finally, he saw the one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head onto the porch roof and through the upstairs window. "How did this happen?" Mr. Bixby asked. "It was the dragon," said Billy. "There's no such thing," Mother started to say. "There is a dragon," Billy insisted. "A very big dragon," and Billy patted the dragon on the head. The dragon wagged its tail happily, then even faster than it had grown, the dragon started to get smaller. It's starting to get smaller, okay? It's starting to get smaller when the parents notice it. When everybody in the room can see the dragon, it starts to shrink. Interesting. That's the first step, right? You shine a light on something, you give name to something, and you're speaking truth. It's like Voldemort, right? You ignore the name, it grows in fear. You have to name it in order for that fear to shrink. That's why I recommend you writing down your fears. If you're fearing your sensations in the middle of the night, especially, write it down on paper because you're shrinking the fear. I don't want to give name to this. I don't want to give name. I don't want to say the word cancer. I don't want to write down the word cancer. Good. All the more reason to do that. Shine a light on the thing that you're fearing. And so back to the story. Soon it was kitten size again. "I don't mind dragons this size," said Mother. "Why did it have to grow so big?" And so now she's petting the dragon, right? Now she's petting the dragon. "Why did it have to grow so big?" "I'm not sure," said Billy, "but I think it just wanted to be noticed." And so I think this is a perfect story for this episode because you're going through anxiety for a reason. These sensations and these habits are there for a reason. Something wants to get noticed. The dragon within you, there's something there. Maybe it's a bunch of your habits meeting its conclusion, right? Meeting a dead end. It's coming together in a way where you can't ignore them at this point. You have to give name to these things. What brought you here? Like, what were you doing for all those years? And people don't want to give name to it. They want to push it aside, like Billy's parents, right? What dragon, right? What dragon? I don't see a dragon, and it's going to grow the more you ignore that beast. And you know what this story is all about because, you know, you're trying to hide something from your partner or from your family. It's going to be quite difficult to walk around all the lies, and it's going to be quite difficult to hide them when they're so prominent to you, right? And that's where I'm going to leave you on this podcast episode. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. What did you think of this episode? Please go over to Spotify, leave a rating if you really enjoy this podcast. If it is enlightening for you, that's all I ask. I would greatly appreciate it. And lastly, rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.
Brad's powerful anxiety recovery program is now available at unpluganxiety.com. The Anxiety Project program is downloadable and puts the power of anxiety recovery in your own hands. Visit unpluganxiety.com for more details. Recovery starts now.